So my name's Rob. I'm, not really anybody. I'm just a teacher from London in the UK. And of course in England, there's been a lot of big developments over the last 2 years. I used to live here in Russia, and then I moved back to England, and a lot of things have been happening there. So the reason I wanted to obviously meet some people today is just to talk about what's been happening there and what the recent kind of developments have been in terms of politics, economics, society and stuff like that. Yeah.
What do you teach?
What do I teach? I teach in England. We have this kind of big social problem at the moment. Lots of kids, they're leaving school without qualifications, without education. Just like here, I can well imagine. It's also extension of neoliberal projects. So this problem seems to be wherever you have too much of this neoliberalism. My job is teaching young people aged 16 to 20. I teach them different things: English language, mathematics, citizenship, stuff like this. So yeah, quite a few things. But usually I'm dealing with these quite hardcore cases who don't want to leave there and stuff like that. Yeah. What do you guys know about England and what's been happening recently?
You have Big Ben.
Sorry?
You have Big Ben.
We have Big Ben.
That's all.
Is that all? Is that all?
And Bletchley Park. And that's all.
Yeah.
You have John Rowling, Harry Potter.
Harry Potter. Yeah.
The greatest thing is Bletchley Park.
Sorry?
Bletchley Park. Between Leeds and London.
You have a what? Sorry?
City, Bletchley Park. Between Leeds and London.
Between Leeds and London.
Yes.
City.
It's Museum of Cryptography.
Museum of
Cryptography.
Cryptography?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm learning something new here. So, thanks for that.
You have Beatles.
Beatles.
You have hooligans.
We have hooligans. Not so many. I think there are more hooligans in Russia these days.
Oh, thank you.
I'm sorry, but I was watching this European Championships.
I'm sorry.
Punks. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I need to leave.
You need to leave. Okay. Cool.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. But in terms of political developments, economic developments, are you aware of what's been happening in England over the past few years?
Burning stores and throwing stones into the shops.
There has been this kind of movement as well, yeah. I mean, we can talk about that.
What's it about? Migrant society? Migrant subculture.
There is migrant subculture. There is a lot of migration into the United Kingdom these days. Definitely. Yeah. Okay.
Do you have migrants in your school?
Yes. Yes. Recently, I was teaching one from Afghanistan. He'd been living in the country for a couple of years. Some from Africa as well. Stuff like this. So yeah. We have quite a few. Yeah. So, anyway, where to start really? What do you all do? Are you all students?
Not anymore.
No, not anymore. Just interested.
Now I'm a student of master program intercultural education.
Okay, cool. Definitely. Intercultural education. We should talk about this. Maybe after.
Yes.
Yeah. That would be nice. That's cool.
I'm also from non-governmental organization German-Russian Exchange, and I have a project. It's called Anti-STEM. It's multicultural trainings, workshops for the school children. And, we do these workshops in schools and in summer camps.
Yeah.
Why is everybody leaving?
Yeah, why is everybody leaving? Did I scare everybody away? Or something? Okay.
So what do you know about processes in the
Okay, so basically, I mean, process in England has been steady movement towards privatisation in last 20 or 30 years. Yeah. This has been a very kind of slow process, starting with Thatcher. If I believe correctly, in Russia it happened in 1990s very quickly. You had this bit of boom, you had kind of shock, right? This shock therapy, yeah, where you had this kind of mass privatisation of, you had this mass privatisation. It didn't go quite well, did it? No, no. Sorry?
Privatization of flats?
Privatisation of everything in this country, I believe, no?
After the Soviet Union.
You know, after Soviet Union, in industry, the entire economy. Whereas I think in England, this process has been much slower. You've had several movements to contend with, of course, the first being the Labour movement.
It's the first place wherever property in England in such amounts government's possession.
Yes, even back in the 1970s, you had big British national companies, British Coal, British Steel, British Telecom for the telephones, British Rail for the railways. None of these companies exist anymore. All of these companies exist in private, in kind of private hands. And of course, you know, this has led to many things. It's led to more inefficiency in the inefficiency. Yes.
Privatization.
Privatization has led to greater inefficiency of the system. Also, it's, you know, well, where to start? I mean, we have these things in England called private finance initiatives. Yeah. What would that be in Russian?
Я не знаю, как на русский перевести, но суть в том, что государственные функции передаются частным компаниям.
Yeah.
То есть государство просто, чтобы сэкономить бюджет, спихивает свои функции в частников.
Exactly. So at the moment we have everything from schools, prisons, aviation companies, and again, if anybody doesn't understand anything, we will slow down and stop and translate. So everything from schools, prisons, aviation companies, waste management. What happens is that the government takes the taxpayers' money, yeah, and they give it to private companies effectively. English.
Мы тут изучаем английский. Готовимся на миграцию.
So the government takes the taxpayers' money which I have, you know, as a teacher, I'm paying my taxes, and they take this money and they give it to a private company, and then the private company provides the service, but of course, because it's a private company, it has to make some profit at the same time. Yeah. So basically, what is happening is the wealth of the people is being transferred into the hands of the private company. Very simple kind of concept to deal with. Yeah. Currently, we have about 800 of these. They are worth a combined budget of about £265 billion, yeah, which is more than 1/3 of Britain's total gross domestic product, GDP, in 1 year. So, of course, you can see, whereas back in the 1980s, we had virtually none, now we have more than 1/3 of total services in the UK budget is run by private companies. This has led to the development of a concept called UK Public Limited Company. Everything in the UK is kind of ready to be sold. It just has to have, you know, the kind of right people backing it.
Я правильно, то есть где-то треть всего обслуживания производится частной компанией.
And before this privatization, how much was this sector of private?
How much was this sector of private? I don't actually know the numbers, so you're getting me bad on my research there. But like I say, we did have most of the national kind of industries in the UK. I'm imagining it would have been smaller than 5%. Yeah, I'm imagining that's a rough figure. I have to check that. So of course, you know, I mean, how did this situation happen? This situation happened in a number of ways. I think the most important moments in the history of the British labour movement in the past 30 years, and perhaps ever, might be the coal miners' strike of 1984-1985. If anybody is familiar with this, does anybody know about this one?
Забастовка шахтеров во время Маргарет Тэтчер.
I have seen movie that Oscar winning.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, this is. Yeah. So this.
Where are you from?
Oh, sorry, I'm from London.
I'm sorry, I'm from London.
I'm sorry that I did not tell you when you came. Yes. I'm from London. I'm a school teacher in London. So school teachers are quite, you know, active. Actually, quite active sector of labour movement in the United Kingdom.
What is your tattoo about?
What was my tattoo about? I'll tell you about that later.
Private question.
Private question. Okay. So where was I? So yeah, the miners' strike in 1985, 1984-1985 was a very fundamental time in British labour movement, because it was at this point that the labour movement was effectively broken, and it's not until maybe the last year or two that the labour movement has again started to organise. What happened there was that hello. What happened there was that the government was trying to sell was trying to privatise the coal mines in the UK, and the labour movement was not happy about this. Now the miners at this time, there was about 1 million workers, so quite a large. Yeah.
Тут предложение все-таки переводить, потому что кто-то плохо понимает, или все-таки не надо переводить?
Ну, как-то кратенько, то есть суть мысли.
В общем, была программа приватизации шахты, собственно, было, рабочие были против, там было 1 миллион рабочих, которые работают на шахте, и они были не очень счастливы в таком обстановке.
Молодцы, все поняли.
Он знал.
Now, of course, this was a much bigger question at that time, because the question was the question for capital was how can we sort of, you know, sort out this problem of organised labour. Yeah?
Вопрос был более важный. Вопрос был такой для капитала: что делать с этим организованным трудом? То есть надо было его smash.
Yes, exactly. And of course, capital was blaming all the problems of capitalism on this organised workforce at this time.
То есть капитал, сваливал все проблемы капитализма на то, что у нас слишком организованный рабочий класс.
So of course, since then,
капитал. Представители капитала, капиталисты.
Они говорили, что есть такая точка зрения в экономии, что проблемы в основном порождаются профсоюзами. Они требуют слишком много, они разбалансируют и так далее. Есть такая теория.
А дальше что было? Да, вот, например, еще маленький пример, что, наверняка Роберт тоже это знает. Как правило, всегда профсоюзы борются за повышение заработной платы. вот, с тем, чтобы хотя бы сохранить уровень, уже достигнутый прежде. Вот. И что делают либералы, как они критикуют за это? Они говорят, хорошо, рабочие добьются повышенной зарплаты, им на руки каждый месяц будут давать больше денег.
Это о текущей ситуации или это
в результате вырастет инфляция.
И опять история.
В результате вырастет инфляция. Но это пример того, как организованных рабочих обвиняют в экономических проблемах. Что из-за роста зарплат вырастет инфляция.
Вот такое было, вот аргумент привели капиталисты во время шахтерского движения.
Понятно. Next.
Yeah. So what then happened in the UK is that it was much more possible with the miners broken, with Thatcher passing anti-union laws, anti-organisation laws and privatisation laws at the same time, that the labour force was effectively marginalised, and it was also outsourced to other places.
В результате поражения этой забастовки были приняты антипрофсоюзные законы, также законы о приватизации, и это привело к маргинализации рабочей силы в целом и развитию процессов аутсорсинга.
Okay, so of course.
Давайте чуть расступимся, а то не все могут.
Да,
Чуть-чуть еще.
When it happened during the 1980s. Yeah. So of course, what then happened is that capital. Yeah. Where are we? We come up to the 1990s now. So what happened is that capital starts to offer up cheap credit to everybody in order that they can, let's say, how do we say? Stimulate, exactly, to stimulate growth and to stimulate business, because it's this fixation with growth that you must always be growing the economy.
То есть еще одно решение, которое было найдено капиталистами, это предложение дешевого кредита для того, чтобы расширение развития, экономического развития, чтобы экономический рост продолжался.
Growing harmony – это постоянно растущая гармония. Чего?
Роберт, ты говорил о гармонии.
Harmony,
Harmony. Well, I think it's harmony.
Нет, ты говорил о гармонии.
Не, harmony – что? Harmony.
Не, он о гармонии не говорил.
Ладно, next.
Хорошо, повтори последний, можешь о чем?
Повтори.
Последняя мысль, фраза.
I don't remember the exact phrase that I used, but in order to keep on stimulating and keep on growing this economy, the capital turned to cheap credit. So what was needed for this was kind of deregulated banking sector and development of cheap credit systems and cheap credit networks.
Развитие системы дешевого кредита привело к дерегуляции банковской системы.
And of course this is all important now, the context that the UK is kind of working in. So, yeah, did you get that?
Как потребовали дешевых кредитов капиталисты и стали регулировать банки для этого.
Нет. Понимаешь?
Kind of.
One asked about that capitalists demand cheap credits, but it's not your idea.
It's not my idea. No, it's not my idea.
Once again.
Once again, what my idea is.
Нет, то есть как Алексей сказал.
Because the economy in this kind of capitalist kind of system, it needs to have this kind of constant growth and this kind of constant feeding, yeah, and constant expansion. There needs to be investment coming from somewhere. Companies need money in order to expand their operations. Now, if the banks are willing to give some credit to these companies, then that's cool. The companies can then take this and they can use it to grow and expand their services further. They can buy government contracts, they can buy out services from the government and stuff like this. This is the process which is occurring. Of course,
давайте чуть пошире еще расступимся, а то не все нас еще
Of course, what we were hoping back, and this brings us closer to the present day, in 1997, we were hoping that this kind of system was going to change. We had new Labour governments in power for the first time in almost 20 years. So we thought, okay, we're going to be thinking more along the lines of, you know, let's say social democracy, maybe something which you see in Finland or Sweden or Denmark, these kind of Scandinavian countries.
Впервые за 20 лет сейчас у власти у нас так называемая лейбористская партия. Вот. И это отсылает
сейчас.
А кто такие лейбористы?
Это трудовая партия, социал-демократы.
Социал-демократы. Ага, и что дальше? Что она? Сейчас
и
она...
надеялись на то, что будет тут экономическая модель, вот как в Финляндии, Швеции, ну, скандинавских странах, там высокая социальная обеспеченность.
Ага.
But of course, yeah. But of course, this isn't what happened. What we had was we had 13 years of Tony Blair and Gordon Brown, and we had more deregulation of the banking sector. We had more privatization of state industries, and we had, you know, a government that launched 3 wars. You know, first against Serbia and Kosovo, then against Afghanistan, where the British Army is still stationed, and then in Iraq. Yeah, and so, you know, this was big disaster basically for a lot of people who were hoping that we were going to be living in a kind of more socially democratic kind of society, that there would be a bigger movement towards the left.
Лейбористское правительство развязало 3 войны. Это Сербия, Югославия, Афганистан и Ирак. Вот. Это
уже 4 войны.
Не похоже. Ну, Сербия это часть Югославии.
Окей. Имел в виду либераль. И что, и все? То, что он сказал?
Нет, либераль.
Это разочарование, короче. А война из-за чего?
Причины войны.
Okay, so the first one, well, actually, all 3 link in very much to Tony Blair's ideas of liberalism and liberty. He saw himself, I believe, this is, you know, my personal opinion, that I believe he saw himself as kind of new type of neoliberal leader who would be bringing this torch of liberty to places in the world where, you know, there was, let's say, these kind of very bad and despotic regimes.
По мнению Роберта, Тони Блэр, он видел себя как такой вот герой истории, который несет знамя свободы миру, вот, с тем, чтобы диктатуры недемократичные разрушить и так далее. То есть связано с его взглядом на лидерство.
Blowing the British metro station, it had nothing to do with this war. Terrorist attacks.
No, because these terrorist attacks, they happened after Britain had been involved in these 3 wars. So, you know, as a direct result of these wars, Britain became target for international terrorists.
Как результат вовлечения Британии в эти войны, Британия стала целью для террористов в совершении их атак. Тут вопрос был о том, что взрывы в метро.
I mean, in the last.
How do you call metro in
the tube?
Tube.
Yeah. Underground. Yeah. Yeah. Also, we have a few names. Yeah. The last war, the war in Iraq, I believe, was particular case. Was particular case because if you look at obviously what happened after the American and British troops went into Iraq and destroyed the country, they then started, you know, selling the country off bit by bit to their own kind of, what do you call them? Their own service providers. So it was in this situation where corporations like Serco and G4S, who are now running the British prison service and who are going to take over.
Sorry, Serco, what is it?
Serco is just a company.
Serco?
Serco.
Serco.
Yeah, Serco and G4S Group 4 Services. They profited particularly out of this war in Iraq, as they were able to provide security services, civilian services, healthcare services, all of this kind of thing. It was almost like an experiment for what is now coming to the UK, which I'm, you know, going to expand upon.
Ну, если говорить о других результатах этой войны, Ирак был разрушен и поделен между некоторыми компаниями, которые получали в результате этого прибыль. То есть просто
такой эксперимент. Они получали подряды на восстановление Ирака, на что-то там, и очень хорошо заработали.
Yeah.
Это было как в качестве эксперимента, собственно, как отдавать частным компаниям.
So it's in this kind of context that most recent parliamentary election took place in 2010. Yeah? Okay, cool. All right. So, of course, what you had an incredibly, let's say, an unpopular, well, not incredibly unpopular, but quite unpopular Labour government, and you had, you know, this new kind of new look Conservative Party. I'm sure you've all seen our new Prime Minister, this David Cameron, speaking on the television cameras.
What is this new look? What changed?
What changed? The public relations work that the Conservative Party is kind of now doing is very different from what they used to do before. Before, they used to be kind of more traditional. They would be going to kind of let's say core voters living in the south of England and in the countryside areas. And you kind of knew what you were getting with these guys. You had like leaders like Margaret Thatcher, very conservative. You had John Major after her, and you had, you know, some after Tony Blair was elected. You had leaders like Ian Duncan Smith, old guy, you know, baldy head, speaks very properly, you know. Then you had William Hague, also very much the same kind of traditional politician. Whereas now with David Cameron, there is more this kind of, let's say, Tony Blair or Bill Clinton or Sarkozy kind of look. He is, you know, very smiling for the cameras, very well dressed, thinks very carefully about what he says to the cameras and this kind of stuff. The media relations are clearly quite different. Yeah.
То есть речь о том, что консерваторы изменились, то есть они приобрели новое лицо. То есть если прежде они ориентировались на какие-то окраины, то есть это не столицу, а на какие-то отсталые районы консервативные. Да. Вот. Если лидеры были такие вот лысоватые, старые, не умеющие вести себя перед камерой, вот, то теперь они изменили свой имидж. То есть они стали нео в этом смысле, что они иначе работают с публикой, public relations сделали свое дело. Но теперь они умеют улыбаться на камеру, умеют увлекать людей, то есть изменили способ коммуникации. Да. Ну, то есть они не стали неоконсерваторами в каком-то другом смысле, а вот только изменили имидж свой.
very important achievement.
Yeah, it is a very important achievement because we thought we were never going to have those bastards back in power. But
Особенно Барак Обама.
yeah, exactly. Barack Obama's another very good example of this. I agree. So, you know, I mean, this is the thing that was dominating the 2010 election campaign. It was all about personalities. You know, of course there was, you know, these debates about education and tax and the economy and stuff like this. But when it came down to it, it was who looked best in front of the camera.
Вопрос на выборах стоял так: кто лучше выглядит в телевизоре? Ну так, если просто.
Хотя другие вопросы тоже обсуждались.
And I'll give you a very good indication of this kind of way that politics is now kind of more marketplace for buying and selling voters. We had three election debates in the UK, and in these election debates we had the leaders of the main party. We had Gordon Brown for the Labour Party, David Cameron for the Conservative Party, and Nick Clegg for the Liberal Democrat Party.
How long did they last?
The debates?
Yes.
I think they were about 1 or 1.5 hours long, something like that, and they were live on television.
Is it something new?
It's something new. Yeah, it's a new development. Yeah.
So it was first time.
First time.
And why it was not before?
I don't know. They didn't think about.
It's a kind of American tradition.
Yeah, it's kind of the Americanization, let's say, of British politics in this way, definitely. So you had the debates, and right afterwards you would have this news bulletin, and it was absolutely crazy to watch this stuff. It was like, where am I? Am I living in 1984 or something like this? Because what happened is that the BBC, they would give this this small electronic pad to members of the audience at the debates. And
explain what is it? Electronic pad. What is it?
Okay, so on the pad there were.
Даются электронные пульты да, людям, которые сидят в студии.
У нас шоу такое есть, там крутить ручку, что-то.
И я, наверное, догадываюсь, к чему это. Дело в том, что вот эти 100 человек, которые сидят в студии, они голосуют, там показывают их результаты, за какого-то кандидата очень много проголосовало.
У нас такие шоу тоже.
Да. И это на самом деле оказывает психологическое влияние вот на миллионную аудиторию, которая сидит, телезрители, вот большинство так думает, а на самом деле вот это 100 человек, которых еще неизвестно как.
Аплодисменты там показывают, такое горячее табло, аплодисменты все.
Как у нас, барьер.
Или там ха-ха, там смех, и все ха-ха.
У нас такое тоже есть.
Вранье.
You've got these, okay, so, you know, I mean, this is what I was calling it, I think, when we were talking before, the Cleggometer. Yeah, Cleggometer. Yeah, so like, I mean, basically, so the audience could, you know, they could turn this dial when they felt good, yeah, okay, about the leader who was in front of them. Not about whether they agreed with them or not, about how their feelings were, yeah? Of course we want like a nice leader who's going to make us feel nice and warm inside, yeah? Now, Nick Clegg, he was a political nobody. He was only invited to this ministers' debate because they wanted to make it seem that there is not just two parties in the British electoral system, there are actually three. There are actually lots, but these three were invited. But Nick Clegg, he was a political nobody. He done very well out of this situation, because when he was speaking to the camera, you felt warm inside. You felt like this was like a man you could trust, you know what I mean? Professional, exactly. He done these things, he looked right at the camera, you know, and he felt like he was talking exactly to you, yeah? So this kind of stuff, I mean it was crazy, it was bullshit, in my opinion. Because there were
Other television channels depend on government or any other elites?
Yes, they do, and I'm going to answer your question, but maybe in about 15 minutes' time, if that's okay, because there has been a whole big debate about the ownership of the media recently in the UK, about who owns media, and it's quite significant. It's a very important development, so I will be coming to that.
One more question.
Yeah.
So do you support the Taliban movement and Saddam Hussein?
No.
No.
No, I don't.
But you're judging the war against them.
Yeah, I am judging the war against it. I mean, the thing is, like, I think you can be in a situation where you don't have to support extremists on either side. You don't have to be so extreme that you support the Taliban, but that doesn't mean that you must support the war against them. Do you see what I mean?
Ну, Роберт хочет объяснить, что...
I can't translate it, but...
Ты идею не можешь понять.
Yeah,
Смотри,
so
если ты против Талибана,
say
ты не значит,
could
что
blow
ты...
you and you can do nothing.
What's that?
They can blow you when you sit in Skype paper.
Yeah, I mean, and why? I mean, I think the reason why is because British troops went to their country and, you know, destroyed everything.
Taliban movement locates in Afghanistan.
Or Eastern Pakistan, or, you know, who knows where they are. Who knows if it even exists.
But not in Iraq.
You know.
Они среди нас.
You know, at the same time, you know, I mean, there was, if it comes to Iraq, I think Iraq had some good models of some nationalized industries at that time which were working for the benefit of many workers. That doesn't mean that I support Saddam Hussein, because, you know, once you start killing people, I think the whole thing starts going wrong. So, you know, and especially in his treatment of, for example, in Kurdistan, the Kurds in the north, this is not a guy who I want to stand up and say he's a good guy. He's not a good guy, in my opinion. Anyway, so 2010 election. So it's very much dominated by personalities. You know, again, one of the big things was, what did we have? We had like 4 days of this story about Gordon Brown calling an old woman a bigot. I've been looking for a translation into Russian of bigot.
Bigot, как на русский перевести?
Что?
Bigot. Bigot.
Maybe explain.
Somebody who is maybe a little bit racist, little bit, but not like big racist, but like little bit.
Около назив.
Что-то шовинист, скорее.
Yeah, maybe like a little bit chauvinist, something like this. So anyway, Gordon Brown.
More concrete about this story.
Yeah, I'm going to explain, yeah. So Gordon Brown, he was doing his election campaign in the north of England. North of England is very strong Labour place. So he was going around and he was talking to people about what was, you know, he was talking to people about the election and, oh, please vote for Labour and this kind of stuff. And he got talking to this one woman and they had discussion. It turned into a kind of small argument. This woman was very strong on this immigration. She said, we don't want any immigrants coming to England and stuff like this. And, you know, personally I don't agree with her, but that's her opinion. Anyway, what happened was he then went into his car and he didn't switch his microphone off, and then he called this woman a bigot. Yeah? Okay. Right, so next 4 days is like Gordon Brown says bigot, Gordon Brown is this, and Gordon Brown is that, and Gordon Brown, go to hell, you know, all of this kind of stuff. And you know, I mean, it was ridiculous. It was absolutely ridiculous because on the same day as this bigot story, we had a story from the Institute of Physical Studies. It's called the IFS. It's a research institute, small one, and they are producing data and information about what is happening with the economy. Yeah. Now, this was maybe 6 or 7 days before the election, something like this, and they said on this day that they felt that the British public did not know enough about the economic situation which was coming after the election to make an informed decision, to make a good decision about who they would vote for. Yeah. Instead, no, go on.
Вот, дело в том, что вот эти 4 дня, когда Гордона Брауна критиковали за то, что он вот к этой пожилой женщине высказался по ее адресу.
Радикально.
Бигот, я не знаю, как перевести точнее, шовинистка или расистка.
Да, или фанатик, или...
Фанатик.
Да.
Сумасшедшая баба.
Да, сумасшедшая баба вообще. Да.
Ну, и что он высказался?
Вот эти 4 дня там по телевизору везде было ужасное, ну только об этом все и говорили, а на самом деле это скрыло то, что там какой-то институт, как он называется?
Institute of Physical Studies.
Институт физических.
Научных.
Понятно. Финансовых исследований фискальных. Вот. Он опубликовал результаты исследования, в результате которых большинство населения страны, оно не понимает экономических программ, то есть что будет, выберут того или другого кандидата.
И тех последствий, которые в любом случае будут после выборов.
Да, то есть люди не понимают вообще, то есть они смотрят только на картинку, да.
И в этом смысле они не могут согласовывать свой выбор с теми проблемами, с которыми столкнется там страна.
Домысливайте уже.
Нет, ну так, в принципе, сказать.
Now, of course, there were reasons for this. Every 2 years, the government has what is called spending review. So what they do is that they look at how government spending is going to be for the next 2 years. Yeah, is the situation going to grow? Are they going to have more money? Will they have less money? Where will they spend the money? Stuff like this. Okay. Now, there was one, and it was due in autumn 2009. In 2009, the Labour government decided not to hold spending review. Yeah. Now, of course, there was a reason for this. That everybody knew that the economy was going down. So, but nobody wanted to admit it, because if any party came out and said the economic situation after the election is going to be a disaster, we're going to need to do X, Y, Z, we're going to need to do very bad things, yeah, nobody would have voted for them, yeah. So all 3 big parties, Labour, Conservatives, Liberal Democrats, they decided not to speak about this situation. It was kind of tactic agreement.
Было заключено тактическое соглашение между 3 ведущими партиями в политической системе Британии о том, чтобы не публиковать отчеты о текущей экономической ситуации. Вот. Для того, чтобы люди голосовали нормально, чтобы они не задумывались об этом.
Там было непопулярное решение.
Да.
Каждый год пересматривался бюджет и смотрели, насколько у них хватает денег на что, или если меньше, то что-то урезать, если больше, что-то добавить. А в этот год вдруг решили они не пересматривать бюджет, а оставить все как есть.
Публиковать
Review.
Not budgets, it's a review.
Ревью — это обзор.
То есть что происходит с бюджетными тратами, да, доходами в этот год? Просто в конце 2011 года решили, что нет, мы его не публикуем, и, соответственно, все решили, что мы поддерживаем эту политику, не говорить это, как некое соглашение всех партий.
Только, видимо, 2009 год.
2009. Of course, you know, most of these bad predictions were coming because, you know, we had a big economic crash, we had a big financial crash in 2008, which I'm sure you're probably all aware of. Yeah. I mean, the situation there was essentially the government produced 180 billion new pounds from the Bank of England and gave them to the banks in order for the banks to recapitalise so that they save them. Yeah. Now essentially this made three of the banks, Lloyds TSB, Royal Bank of Scotland and Northern Rock. This turned them into national banks, but I mean the situation is quite bad. They have not been acting like national banks, they've been acting still like private banks, and now they're currently in the process of being sold back to the private sector for less than the 180 billion that was given for them in the first place.
Переводи.
Ну, в результате кризиса, который, как мы знаем, был в 2008 году, правительство Британии спасло 3 банка. То есть, несмотря на то, что они не являются национальными банками, а частными, тем не менее,
они были деньги
из бюджета были направлены им с тем, чтобы спасти, поправить их финансовое положение. Ну, это, в общем-то, делали не только в Британии, это во всех странах. Такой выход из кризиса.
Yeah, exactly. So of course this made a big hole in the budget of the UK, and what needed to be done was any government coming into power in 2010 would have had to deal with this problem, and the problem being that, yeah, I mean this bank bailout, it added to the problem, but there was huge problem of government borrowing money, and they were borrowing at such a rate that they could not keep up with interest payments anymore. So it was coming, but then, you know, when they dropped this 180 billion into the water, the problem just really exploded.
В результате этой помощи в бюджете образовалась огромная дыра, с которой уже должны были иметь дело после выборов 2010 года, то есть уже следующие, кто будет избран.
А что это такое?
Ну, собственно говоря, правительство было вынуждено увеличивать заимствование, и при этом разница постоянно начинала увеличиваться. Ну, в общем, для всех стран, например, Великобритании, когда каждый Центробанк либо государство начинают занимать, и этот объем заимствования должен постоянно увеличиваться, потому что параллельно с этим есть еще и выплаты обратные. To pay back and to borrow.
Exactly.
Again.
Yeah, that's it. Now, of course, like I said, the public in this election, they were not informed about this. We only heard a couple of sound bites about this. The first one was from the IFS, like I said, that the public did not know enough about economic situation to make a good decision in the election. The second one was about a week before the election. We had George Osborne, who is now finance minister in the UK, Conservative, and he said after the election, his government, if it was elected, Conservative government, would be making savage cuts to the public spending. Yeah.
Сокращение сбережений. Savage is barbaric.
Yeah, savage, yeah. Deaky, yeah. I like this, deaky, yeah. Wild cuts, yeah. Okay, so, you know, we heard about that and you think, okay, it's the Tories are always talking about this. But then, like the next day, you have Alistair Darling, and he was Labour Chancellor, Labour Finance Minister at this time, and he was saying after the election, I'm going to be making cuts worse than Thatcher to the public spending. Alistair Darling, former finance minister, Labour finance minister.
Бывший министр финансов сказал, что сокращение будет больше, чем даже при Маргарет Тэтчер.
This is a Labour, I have to emphasise this point, this is a Labour Chancellor saying that he is going to make cuts worse than Thatcher.
Да, только проблема в том, что Маргарет Тэтчер, она была консерватор, а это лейбористы. То есть это партия трудящихся.
You know, I mean, Margaret Thatcher is, you know, I mean, this is a woman who, you know, the working class of England, from London to Manchester to Liverpool to Leeds to Glasgow to Birmingham, across the country to the Welsh coalfields and the Scottish Highlands, the working class of England absolutely fucking hate this woman. Excuse my use of bad language, but I get very passionate.
We have development in OccupyLondon.
Он по-русски понимает.
Я все равно. You know this?
No. I want to say about that. We need to understand a very big difference between Occupy movement in London, in New York, and so on, and so-called Occupy movement in Russia. This movement is against Putin. Their movement is against capitalism. It's very big difference.
I think so, yeah, I think that's probably...
Да, то есть совершенно это два разных движения. То, что здесь в России, ну это моя точка зрения, то, что в России, в Москве и в Питере пользуются вот этой формой, Occupy, там какие-то маски, вот эти Guy Fawkes и так далее, все это, все дела, это всего лишь берется форма. На самом деле, вот движение Occupy в США, в Англии, в других странах, оно антикапиталистическое. Движение в России, оно антипутинское. Вот и все дела. Поэтому нельзя сравнивать.
Оно не антипутинское, оно антикапиталистичное.
И антикапиталистов одновременно.
Это одно и то же.
Мы неоднократно обсуждали то, что как бы Occupy у нас скорее технология.
Вот об этом и речь.
Какая
Об этом и речь. Что
Технология.
цели движения,
Движение, а технология.
цели движения разные, по форме они похожи.
Технология Occupy, технология протеста.
Страны одинаковые, все происходит одинаково. А у нас все разное в Occupy, блин. Все одинаковое должно быть.
Occupy,
Нам просто нужно понять друг друга, вот это все.
It's not ideas of Occupy movement, but just technology that came here and used.
Yeah.
But, можешь еще раз свой вопрос, просто то есть ты считаешь, что нельзя так разделять, что есть антикапиталистическое движение Occupy на Западе и антипутинское движение здесь. А можешь свою точку зрения? Что? Это ты лично. А в целом просто говорю.
Мне кажется, что просто движение Occupy, оно как раз совпало со временем, с антипутинским движением. К нам оно тоже пришло. Изначально оно здесь, в Питере, было как небольшая часть протестного движения. То есть оно не включало всех протестных. И потом не все протестующие против Путина относят себя к движению Occupy. Оно несколько размывается, действительно, но все равно есть несколько антикапиталистических.
Я имею в виду по форме Occupy Абай, вот это вот, Occupy чистые пруды, Occupy Исаакиевская. Это все по форме.
Дело в том, что Исаакиевская изначально принимала все течения людей всех взглядов, в принципе.
Капитализм, а за что? Против капитализма, но за что?
So, okay.
За что Occupy выступает?
Why? I mean, as far as I can see, Occupy is a reaction against this incredibly right-wing, pro-capitalist government which we have. Yeah, in England, it's a protest against them. Yeah.
Это просто против.
Yeah, because there are so many different ideas coming from there. Because the movement is essentially, this is what happens, I feel, when you open the movement out to everybody and say everybody is welcome, everybody can come here. Yeah. And what happens is you get this whole mishmash, big mix of ideas. Yeah.
Много идей.
And then, of course, the one unifying thing about them is that they are against this government and they're against this capitalism. That is the one common factor.
Which is the same thing here with the anti-Putin.
Well, then,
you have fascists
then our
walking with
struggle
the
is your
nationalists.
struggle, essentially.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I mean, isn't it the struggle of the working class?
Против правительства прозвучало. если все поняли.
Против неолиберальной политики правительства. То есть тут акцент на том, что это антикапиталистическое движение. А если в целом взять это движение несогласных против Путина, белые ленточки, вот это все, это против Путина оно направлено, не против капитализма. Даже можно здесь опросить, кто из здесь собрался. Нет, можно, смотри, можно даже спросить, кто из здесь собравшихся
Путин от капитализма не отделим.
против капитализма выступает. Я думаю, меньшинство. Вот мы с Робертом тут еще несколько человек.
Так нет, подожди. Против Путина нельзя определять, потому что Путина берут, поставят другую персону, которая будет преследовать те же самые цели, те же самые интересы капиталистов. Ты же понимаешь, что Путин это просто пешка в этой игре.
Мне не надо объяснять, что я против Путина.
А почему сейчас все сейчас против персоны Путина? Нет, это против путинизма как системы.
Хорошо. Системы Путина против системы Путина. То есть это Путин это не система.
Это против системы.
Путин это какой-то там звено.
Yeah, I mean, essentially the way that I see the developments in Russia over the last 20 years is what's developed is developed this plutocracy within Russia, within the borders of Russia, yeah, and it's not so it's not going along the same lines as capitalism in the West because of the freedom of information and trading and so on, which is going forth in this area of the world. Yeah, so there's also plutocracy there in in America, in England, in the West, in France, European Union, and stuff like this, but because of the nature of the game, because of the free markets and things like this, then there is much more. Let's say there is much more flow, there is much more exchange, yeah, between people within this system, within this plutocracy, whereas the plutocracy that exists within Russia is just like Russia. I mean, I don't know, would anybody agree with me or disagree with me on that point? Like this, and lots of people are buying into this idea. I mean, I went out on the day, this queen had her birthday or some stupid crap like that, and everybody went out on the streets. I actually went out on that day. I was amazed at how many people were waving these British flags and like, woo, 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 we love the queen. It was crazy, man. So that there is that kind of nationalism, which is, let's say, more soft, more gentle, yeah. I mean, it's still nationalism, it's patriotism, yeah. And then you have this kind of more hardcore factions who are, essentially, neo-fascist organisations, English Defence League and stuff like that. And, those guys tried to get into this Occupy movement, but, they were told, go home, we're not interested in you, and they were chased away by people. So, yeah.
I have a question. Do you still have a Hyde Park tradition?
What's that?
Hyde Park tradition.
Hyde Park tradition, yeah, still.
What kind of moves?
I've never been there, so I don't know.
Occupy people try to come there.
Yeah.
Does Occupy people try to come there and speak to people?
Yeah, sure.
How does it work?
You bring a box, or you go to a bench and you sit like this on Sunday. This is probably the first time I've ever been to Speaker's Corner in my life. It's today.
So here's your first Hyde Park.
Yeah, here's my first Hyde Park speech, and you can just do it like this.
I think it's a good idea to bring Occupy ideas to Hyde Park.
Definitely.
But who originally used your Hyde Park? Do you know?
Anybody.
Is it political movement or?
No, it's just anybody. Political movements can use it if they want to. Religious too, nationalist, whatever, aristocratic, whoever it is.
And another question from my comrade. What must Marxists do in our times?
Okay, this brings me back to something that I want to talk about, which I wanted to talk about. It brings me back to the question of the media, which leads into the question of the banks, which leads me to my answer. So there's a few stages to this, okay? Because final thing that I wanted to talk about what's happening in United Kingdom these days is, has anybody heard of the Leveson inquiry? No? Okay, this is a fantastic thing which is happening in the UK, and I'm really happy about picking up the newspaper and reading what is happening in the Leveson inquiry. Basically, a few years ago, 4, 5, 6 years ago, there was this newspaper story about a little girl. Her name was Millie Dowler. You heard about this? You seem a bit savvy on the old UK stuff, so. Are you from Australia originally? Oh, cool. So there was this story about this girl called Millie Dowler, and she went missing. She was about 12 or 13. She went missing, and then she was found murdered somewhere, and she'd been raped and all this, horrible stuff. And newspapers were having, like, good time looking for her, selling lots of newspapers, yellow press, all of this kind of stuff. Now, while they were looking for her, there was this sign that she was still alive, and the reason is that at first, when the mother and father, at first when the mother and father tried calling the phone, they could not get through, and they could not put voicemail message because it was full. And then after maybe 2 days, they tried calling again, and this time they were able to leave voicemail message. So to them, it was signal that she was alive. Yeah. Now, what really happened was she wasn't alive at all. She was dead, raped, all that kind of stuff already at this point. What had happened was there had been a newspaper journalist who had hacked into her phone. Don't ask me the technology, I don't know how it works, I don't know how they do it, but they had managed to get inside her phone, delete some messages so that they could listen to the other ones. Yeah? Okay. Did everybody understand that? Because this is the introduction to the story of what Marxists have to do. I know it's a strange introduction, but...
Пропала девочка, вот, потом она была найдена, изнасилована, убитая там и так далее. Вот. Проблема в чем? Ну, об этом много писали газеты, британские газеты известные.
Ну и что?
Вот. Проблема в том, что родители думали, что она жива, потому что когда ей звонили, вот, ну, по тому, что там не было сообщения.
Да. Нет, был заполнен ящик. А потом, из-за того, что удалились сообщения некоторые, он оказался неполным.
Да.
Ей можно было оставить сообщение.
Это для них было сигналом, что она жива. А на самом деле какой-то журналист каким-то путем, вот Роберт не знает как, он смог удалить сообщение из этого ящика с тем, чтобы прослушать.
So what happened is that, well, this particular newspaper was the News of the World, which at that time was being run by a very famous Australian, Rupert Murdoch, okay, who also owns the Times, the Sunday Times, the Sun, and had a very big share of broadcasting corporation called BSkyB in the United Kingdom. This is just what he owns in the United Kingdom. In America, I think he owns News International. Like,
yeah, News International. I mean, he's the world's most powerful Englishman.
Yeah.
And in Australia, he owns, I think, 70% of the media almost.
Exactly. So this is real.
In the Asian region to Asia Pacific.
Yeah, he's got like Star TV in Asia, and he's got all sorts of, he's got very big newspapers, very, very powerful man. And this was one of his newspapers which happened. Now, there was a further investigation led by another newspaper into this story. Again, I can't remember on the specifics of how that happened, but because of that, they realised what came out of this investigation was that the journalist had been found out hacking this telephone. So this caused big outrage, big outcry, like, holy goddamn, you know what I mean? Like, how is that journalist, you know, hacking that poor girl's phone and stuff like this? And what started emerging, actually, as this investigation got a little bit deeper, was that lots of people were having their phones hacked by the news of the world. Yeah, and this was, you know, lots of celebrities, you know, members of the royal family, government ministers, Gordon Brown even, as Prime Minister, he had his phone hacked by the news of the world. So, do you want to translate at this point?
История такая, что выяснилось в результате расследования, когда пытались найти этого журналиста-взломщика, что, оказывается, у большого числа людей, знаменитых, также взломаны телефоны, включая премьер-министра.
Этот почтовый ящик на телефоне был?
Да, на мобильном телефоне.
А как он так с почтового ящика телефона удалял?
Вот хакер, крекер.
Журналист-хакер?
Journalist.
Скачал программу.
Yeah. Now, of course, this was a big sensation. So, what happened was David Cameron, who was now Prime Minister, he set up a public-led judge inquiry into this practices of the media. Translate.
Браун.
No, Cameron.
Кэмерон.
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 Продюсер?
Нет. Вот. Он инициировал публичное расследование всей этой истории, потому что это был большой скандал и возмущение.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, of course, what you have to understand here is that the judiciary are independent in the United Kingdom. You know, it's not like this case in which it seems to me in Russia that, you know, judiciary is owned by the government. And, yeah, exactly. Yeah. So there you go. There's a good example. So what happened is this judge, he started looking into these practices of the media, and he started off with this phone hacking case at the News of the World. Now, it started reaching first News of the World said it was just one journalist. Then they had to take that statement away in front of new evidence and say, well, maybe it was like 5 journalists, but the editor didn't know. And then it turned out that, well, okay, it was more than 5 journalists and the editor did know. And, you know, so on and so on. It starts getting bigger and bigger and bigger, yeah? And, you know, this newspaper actually had to be shut down. It became so unpopular that it had to close itself down because, you know, it was kind of public opinion was turning against it so badly. Now, what else was happening at this time? At this time, Rupert Murdoch, he was trying to negotiate a takeover of BSkyB Broadcasting. This is one of the 3 big broadcasters in the United Kingdom. You have the BBC, you have ITV, which is like NTV, or did it change to something else? NTV.
Like.
Yeah, like. And then you have BSkyB, which is, you know, a huge sector of televised media. He wanted to take this over for himself. Now, if he would have had this, and the Times, and the Sunday Times, and the Sun, he would have owned about 40% of the media in the United Kingdom. And there are rules against, you know, this kind of thing happening, and they have to go up against the Competition Commission and stuff like this. So there has to be parliamentary inquiry when somebody wants to take over so much of the media.
Laws against this centralization.
Yes. Yeah, the laws against these kind of monopolies. Yeah.
Руперт Мёрдок, он владел в результате 40% всех средств массовой информации.
Один человек. И вот эти вот каналы, которые у них там, сколько, 3, да?
3 основных.
Основных. первый там BBC.
BBC,
ITV.
это подобное НТВ, он сказал.
Ну ладно, третий.
Третий вот этот
BSkyB.
То есть это так и пишется, заглавное B, потом Sky, потом B.
BBC это
же национальный
хороший. То есть я вот постоянно новости BBC читаю.
BBC it's a national channel.
National channel, paid for by taxpayer, but still corporation. It's a publicly funded corporation.
Есть служба русская BBC и британская, да, получается. А новости у них одинаковые, то есть показывают у них там в Англии наши русские новости вообще. Russian news.
Russian news
Content.
from BBC Russia.
Да.
Yeah, not much.
Вообще.
Well, people who want to watch Russian news unfortunately have to go to Russia Today on their cable box.
Есть телеканал Russia Today, это такая пропаганда для англоговорящих.
А что за канал тогда BBC Russia?
BBC Russia это филиал BBC. Они ведут здесь свою пропаганду на русском языке.
То есть для нас.
Exactly. So what happens is you have this parliamentary commission, and it's being headed by one of the few genuinely liberal personalities in the new government, a guy called Vince Cable. He's the business secretary. Vince Cable is caught, I guess, this whole thing with the media. Vince Cable is caught saying to a couple of undercover journalists that he will make war on Rupert Murdoch. And after this news story comes out, then he is kind of fired from his job, and it's given to somebody else, a guy called Jeremy Hunt. Jeremy Hunt's the culture secretary, and he was ready to approve. He was ready to approve this this takeover of BSkyB by Rupert Murdoch before this whole phone hacking scandal blew up. Now, the next question which gets asked by the Leveson inquiry is, well, and this is where it starts getting interesting, because he starts saying, well, what are the connections? Okay, so if it's one editor and their team of reporters and they're hacking phones, well, you know, next question he starts asking, what's the relationship between the newspapers and the politicians? And then we start finding out information about Andy Coulson. He was a former editor of News International, of News of the World. He became David Cameron's media secretary, his kind of press officer. So not elected, but you know, managing the communications of Downing Street. And so and we also start finding out that David Cameron, he has been very much courting Rupert Murdoch, inviting him to his, you know, kind of dinner parties and going for, you know, weekends away at Rebecca Brooks's. This is the editor of News of the World who got caught. And all of this stuff starts coming out, and it's beautiful when you open the newspaper and you're like, holy shit, yeah, like everything that I think up here is actually true. They are all kind of mixing together within this kind of big soup. And I'm losing it a little bit because I'm getting a bit tired, and my voice is starting to strain a little bit, so yeah, and my thoughts are out there. Anyway, so what you start seeing is this whole network of politicians, journalists, editors, media owners who are kind of involved in this manufacturing the political process, let's say, yeah. You know, it emerged that when the BSkyB takeover was up for grabs. This Jeremy Hunt, he was sending text messages to this George Osborne, the finance minister. He was saying, oh, I don't think with this Vince Cable we're going to make it, you know, we're going to make this BSkyB takeover happen. Of course they want to, it's, you know, huge business for them and they'll all be personally enriched an awful lot. And, you know, George Osborne is texting back saying, oh, don't worry, we're going to get a solution. And then when this Vince Cable gets fired, he says, I hope you like the solution. You are now in charge of this takeover bid and stuff like this. You need to, yeah. There's a lot there.
История такая, что в результате, когда вскрылась весь этот скандал с прослушиванием телефонов, вот, все это выплеснулось на странице газет. И вот Роберт говорит по поводу себя о том, что, ну, интересно, вот, открываешь газету, читаешь, и на самом деле все выясняется, что действительно так, как ты думал. Ну, имеется в виду с левой точки зрения, что все они там совсем связаны и так далее. Вот. И видно переписку тех, кто определяет точку зрения...
В газете опубликовали переписку?
Вот это я не знаю. Where this messages were published in papers?
Yeah, the messages were published in the papers because these ministers were being brought forward before the judge and had to submit their evidence.
Вызвали в суд, он должен был быть свидетелем, очевидцем этого. Вот, поэтому
что?
Вот, это было перед тем, как он был вызван в суд, да?
Yeah. No, I didn't understand.
Вообще переговоры опубликовали в газете?
After it gets published, yeah. So of course he submits the
as a result of investigation.
As a result of investigation.
Следователи выяснили, это было опубликовано.
So you
опубликована переписка в результате расследования.
Судья присудилась, что его опубликовали.
So you've had the culture secretary. He's been brought up in front of the judge. You've had David Cameron himself. He's been brought up in front of the judge. Tony Blair has had to give testimony, as has Gordon Brown. So this whole host of political figures are being brought in front of the judge and being basically, explain yourself. Yeah, why are you letting this happen to the media? Why are you making such strong relationships with people like Rupert Murdoch, yeah, who are engaged in these kind of corrupt practices? Explain yourself. And it's fantastic because, you know, it's like it finally feels like the first time we're getting some truth from the newspapers, yeah, and it's not just a bunch of bullshit.
В результате этого расследования многих Блэра и остальных вызывали в суд и их спрашивали, объясните, почему у вас такие тесные связи с Рупертом Мёрдоком, который владеет СМИ и так далее.
Нет, почему вы выстраиваете такие крепкие связи с журналистами подобными?
Роберт говорит, что это поразительно, потому что впервые в газетах начали писать правду об этом. То есть обычно-то они лгут.
Now, as a result of this also, a lot of people are scared because Andy Coulson, former editor of News of the World, former press officer for Tony Blair, he is currently being charged with perjury and attempting to pervert the course of justice.
Perjury,
lying to the courts.
Я хотел свое мнение сказать по поводу того, что у нас же эти связи еще более close.
Так то же самое.
Так вот, единственное, что у нас просто их не вызывают в суд, и об этом люди не знают, и то есть у нас как будто все...
Все винят Путина. На самом деле проблема-то глобальная.
So yeah, so he is being charged with Rebecca Brooks. She is.
Что?
Кого вызывают? Кого у нас не вызывают?
У нас кого у нас вызывают?
Хотели Путина вызвать.
Россияне. По поводу россияне. Нет. Вот мы об этом говорим, что...
In Russia, judge has the same relations, so it's much more corrupted.
Okay, yeah. This is quite serious crime in the United Kingdom, and if you are punished with it, you can get, you know, up to 10 years in jail. So probably they won't get full 10 years, but they'll get a few years because I think Again, it hasn't been proved, but I think, and sometimes I think, and I can read it in the newspaper and it's true, sometimes that happens and sometimes, you know, I think that they are guilty. And there is a whole host of other people, smaller people, who are also being charged with this. Now, why is that important for the Marxist movement in the UK? Well, as Alexei correctly pointed out,
Оппозиционер, как на английском перевести?
Opposition.
Opposition. Member of opposition.
Member of opposition. Yeah. Why is that important for the Marxist movement in the UK? It's important for the Marxist movement in the UK because, as Alexei correctly pointed out, Marxist movement in the UK is primarily concerned about capitalism, yeah, and wants to break the stronghold of the banks over society. I'm going to translate that. Sorry. Thanks.
Как справедливо сказал Алексей, что марксистам необходимо показывать эту связь между средствами массовой информации и капитализмом. Ну и в целом необходимо скрывать то, о чем не говорится в СМИ. То есть это...
Для капитализма это важно, да? Или как?
Нет, это важно для всех, чтобы с ним бороться.
Okay, the point is that most important task, yes, is educating people about how the financial system works in the United Kingdom and how it is not working in your interest as everyday normal person. Now, why is Leveson important to this? Well, Leveson is important to this because we had two banking scandals just before Parliament went on summer holidays. Yeah, maybe you heard about them. The first was the Barclays LIBOR scandal, right? You heard about that? Yeah, yeah. Anybody else? No? Did you? You didn't even hear about it?
No.
Oh,
shame on me.
Shame on you indeed. Okay, so basically,
You don't have Twitter.
Yeah. How do you explain this? Basically, you've got these financial products which banks sell to each other, yeah, and there is so they sell these products to each other. One bank sells to another bank, and what they do is they have fixed, because it's financial product, it is worth some money, so some interest has to be paid back on this financial product. What Barclays were caught doing is they were caught selling financial products at a higher interest rate than had been set by the Bank of England. Okay. Now, the way that transfers itself onto the consumer is if I want to buy a financial product from a bank, for example, let's say I want to buy a new car, yeah, okay. The products which I'm buying from the bank has an interest rate, some kind of internal interest rate from the bank, which is not being legally done, which is making me pay more interest money back to the bank. That's kind of how it works on a simplistic level, but it's a little bit more complicated. Does that make sense?
So-called hidden fees?
Basically, yeah. So the banks are making, well, I mean, the banks are making more money on you than anything. In the United Kingdom, from the moment that you become an adult, yeah, from the moment you are legally 18, you start paying interest on everything, yeah, absolutely everything, yeah. You rent a house, okay, from private landlord, that money is being used to pay back a loan to the bank. You buy a house, you know what I mean, that you are paying your money back to a bank already, yeah. You go and buy products at the shops, you know, these products are bought with money which was loaned from a bank, and that company has to pay, whoever it is, Lenta or Tesco or whatever company it is, has to pay back some interest to the bank. Whoever, whichever supermarket, Lenta, Tesco, Sainsbury's, whoever it is, yeah, it doesn't matter. The point is that the system is essentially, it's rigged against you, yeah, and you know, it's things like this. This is like exposure of the system, this Barclays lending rates scandal. Okay.
Question, how many people are affected by these scandals? Small minority or many of?
Many of, I would say, you know, hundreds of thousands, if not millions.
So before they thought that everything not so bad,
yeah.
After the scandal they are...
Yeah, exactly, they have to change everything.
It's a kind of naive.
Что ты хочешь сказать?
Я хотел сказать, что наивная реакция получается, что они думают, что все хорошо, а после скандалов только...
Exactly.
Это странно.
Yeah, no, I know, but it's, you know, I mean, the thing is, like, how do you get people to work out? How do you people to get...
Кто бы говорил? У нас в стране, по-моему, все так думают. Большинство.
Now, as a result of this, what happened is that there was calls, public calls for public judge-led inquiry, like Leveson, into the banking sector. And Cameron is saying, like, no, like, fuck off, everybody, kill story, yeah? And then, like, a few days later, it comes up again, and he is saying, no, we're having nice inquiry, parliamentary inquiry, everybody's looking, you know, after Parliament, like, kill story, get rid of the story, just, like, let the Olympics come along or something, please, help me. You know, and he managed to get it his way that there is going to be parliamentary inquiry into this. Now, there is no point in having a parliamentary inquiry into this, because most of the people in the parliament, they're all part of the financial system anyway. Remember who I was telling you about. Who are the members of the government? Lobbyists, millionaires, investment bankers themselves, yeah? Okay, so of course they don't want the information to be shared. Of course, a few days after, we were reminded about the corrupt practices of the banking system by HSBC, who had been cleaning money for Mexican drug barons in Mexico. This is another London-based bank, yeah? So there is more, you know, kind of demand for this kind of open public inquiry into the banking sector. Who is involved? Yeah. Who is involved, and you know, who is making profits out of this?
Другой случай — это связь одного из банков, который тоже базируется в Лондоне. Его связь с мексиканским наркобароном.
Которые отмывали деньги там.
Да, и это еще один случай для того, чтобы было публичное расследование.
То есть в Англии мексиканские наркобароны отмывали деньги?
Банк участвовал в отмывании денег мексиканских наркобаронов.
Английский банк.
London-based bank, yeah.
У нас такая же была история,
кстати, да.
СПАК, да. Во время работы Путина в питерской мэрии там была компания СПАК, Санкт-Петербургское агентство, что-то там. И оно там вместе вот с членами кооператива обыска, там были еще там из Лихтенштейна несколько товарищей, они там тоже участвовали в смывании, там в незаконных действиях, в частности было с колумбийскими, там с мельдинским наркокартелем, по-моему, ну в общем с колумбийскими, или не ну в общем с колумбийским наркобароном, там тоже деньги отмывались для него.
Yeah, that's right. That was when was it? Last year?
No,
В 90-х годах это было, а журналисты выяснили это в 2005-м. Когда Путин, до того, как стал президентом, когда он здесь вот работал. А журналисты это в 2005 году раскопали, новая газета.
So just as, I know you got a question, this is my final point. You know, my prediction, my one prediction and my one great hope, basically, as a Marxist living in the United Kingdom, is that we are one banking scandal away now from full, open, public inquiry into the banking system. Who's involved, because the politicians are clearly involved, and you know, we need to start thinking about how we can make a financial system that is not benefiting the few, that is, you know, actually using the money of the people to build things of the future for the people. Yeah, so kind of common ownership, national bank or whatever, you know what I mean, for financing national infrastructure projects and stuff like this. So that's my one great prediction, my one great hope, that hopefully sometime in the next 6 months, year or so, there will be another banking scandal, and that we might start to open the books and publish what's happening on those guys.
Ну, Роберт, как марксист из Британии, вот он считает, что его большая надежда и марксист, да, тут у нас марксисты сидят, да. Вот, его надежда большая и предсказание такое, что нет, такое, что в будущем будет еще один банковский скандал, вот, и это поставит в повестку дня вопрос о том, чтобы банковская финансовая сфера была открыта для людей, то есть чтобы она была под контролем людей.
Транспортность.
Да, потому что одно из переходных требований марксистов вообще, оно заключается в том, чтобы не было, не только частных компаний капиталистических, да, вот, чтобы такие организации, как банки, вот, чтобы они были под контролем людей. Конечно, это не конечная наша цель, потому что наша конечная цель — это мировая революция. Вот, а так все правильно, да?
Есть эффективное государство некапиталистическое? Может быть?
Нет.
Нет.
Effective anti-capitalist state doesn't exist.
I don't know. I'm not the theorist.
Марксизм показал себя с хорошей стороны?
You know, questions of theory.
А марксисты, они против капитализма? Марксисты, они против капитализма?
Что?
No, I'm not.
Марксисты, они против капитализма? А за что?
За коммунизм.
Instead of having everything owned by few people, we want everything owned by everybody.
Все для всех.
Подожди, все для всех.
Вопрос.
A few more questions.
Роберт, а вопрос можно еще задать?
Yes, of course.
Значит, первый вопрос. Нет, я задам по-русски, сформулирую по-английски. Как много женщин участвуют в английской политике, как в парламенте, так и в оппозиции? Ты не понимаешь вопрос? Это первый вопрос.
You're asking about women in parliament and women in opposition.
How many percent?
Currently, I think it's somewhere around 30-40% in parliament are women. Yeah.
30-40% женщин в парламенте.
Хрена себе.
To be perfectly honest, not much. You know, I mean, the thing is, as far as England's concerned, you know, for a lot of Marxists and a lot of, you know, oppositional people, the question has kind of moved, you know, beyond feminism, because it's accepted that, you know, that there is, you know, essentially, well, let's say that men and women are on kind of equal footing. Yeah. It's accepted, you know, in many areas of the of you know, not just the opposition movement, but society generally.
But I think that's kind of, I mean, as a woman, I think that's, I mean, even whether we're talking about Russia or the UK, I mean, Natasha and I looked at a few statistics about 6 months ago, and actually the world's leading country for female participation in parliament was actually Rwanda. No, it was Rwanda or Nigeria. Several African countries are actually the top two. America, for example, which we think is the land of equality, occupies the same percentage as Afghanistan.
And I think the UK,
and I think the UK was 27%. Yeah, 27%, which is like Syria. It was almost the same, 25, 27%. So I don't know. I think it's disappointing still if in the opposition women. For me, I think these questions of equality don't actually exist, because generally, if you look at the House of Lords, look at these bankers, I mean, most of them are still men. So
that is true. That is true. I mean, but this is what I'm saying. I mean, all I can really say is in terms of, you know, the circles where I am involved, you know what I mean? I mean, I don't feel that, you know, that there is kind of issue, though there is kind of funny story about that one, because one of my comrades was accused, I believe wrongly, I don't know what the evidence was against him, of being a kind of sexist chauvinist within the Socialist Workers' Party, which he was operating.
I've seen chauvinism in the opposition in Australia. Misogyny.
I mean, I can only you know, talk about things from my own personal experience on this kind of matter, and you know, on a personal level, I don't give a shit who you are, where you're from, what colour your skin is, you know what I mean, you know, whether you're a man or a woman, you know what I mean, it's not that what counts. You know, as far as I'm concerned, it's, you know, it's where you're at here and here, you know, so yeah, but you know, I mean, those statistics are pretty bad. Yeah, they are pretty bad. They are mentioned publicly from time to time, along with other issues of equality and diversity. They want more people from ethnic minorities coming into Parliament, so yeah, I think they are relevant questions to be asked.
Question.
Yeah.
Who is bigger member of opposition in Europe? Bigger member.
Biggest.
Biggest. Biggest.
Самый известный.
Most famous. Who?
I don't know. No, forget Assange, man. You know what I mean? Assange.
It's my opinion.
This is your friend.
No, not my friend.
You know, I mean, I don't know. I can only speak in the UK experience. I mean, people who I look up to and I respect probably the most in the UK is a guy called Mark Sawatka. He's trade unionist, and he is coming out very publicly, and he is making very good arguments about, you know, anti-capitalism and, you know, the need for organised labour force to you know, take more action and activity towards, you know, I think he's revolutionary at heart, but, you know, he can't say it in front of the cameras. Марк Sawatka, he's a cool guy.
Я не понял, как имя, фамилия звучит. Маркс
Sawatka.
Марк
Sawatka.
Макс
Марк Sawatka.
Марк Сервотка. Профсоюзный лидер, вот, у которого революция в груди, но он не может сказать об этом на камеру. Вот возникает вопрос, что это за революционер, который хранит революцию только в груди?
Нет, у нас тоже не говорят об этом публично.
You know, I mean, the thing is, I mean, he has to play this game, because if he says to the cameras, revolution, everybody, he never gets on the camera again. You know, you have to compromise. You had a second one.
Второй вопрос про Олимпийские.
Ah, yeah, beautiful.
И как много денег ушло, да? И как вообще люди относятся к этому?
10 billion pounds was the price of the Olympics.
10 миллиардов.
In rubles, that's about what is it? It's 40 to 1, so 10 billion times by 40.
400 миллионов рублей.
Yeah. Billion. Not million, billion.
400 миллиардов рублей.
Yeah.
О боже.
Oh, Boże. What are the lasting effects of this? I don't know. We have a new nice stadium in England, in London. You know, we've already got about 10 of those already. So I don't know. What are the effects for the area as well? I think is an important question, because the Olympics are currently taking place in one of the poorest areas in the country, which is the London Borough of Newham. And just before I left to come on holiday, I left about 2 days before the Olympics started. They had unrolled. We have these huge, like what have you got here? You got these. What are they called? These Khrushcheviki, like. Khrushchevki council estate, housing estates, yeah. So we've got these ones in England. They go up very high, and they put these advertisements on them: BMW, McDonald's, Coca-Cola, yeah, and all of this kind of stuff. So
на окна прямо.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Завесили людям окна.
Yeah, totally. So when lots of nice tourists are coming, yeah, they're not seeing any, you know, bad thing in London. They're not seeing like this poor people. They're seeing nice advert for BMW. Yeah. Currently, this is a local council that is so poor that it cannot afford to house people inside the borough anymore, and they are looking at housing people in places as far away as Stoke-on-Trent and, you know, Bradford, and these cities which are hundreds of miles away. You know, I mean at the same time, I mean, I look at, you know, because I'm doing this education with these young people, and a lot of them, they want to do things like, you know, they're just looking for like basic working jobs, being a carpenter or a builder or a plumber or something like this. And the organisation which I used to work for, they took some of the young people up to Olympic building sites, and you know, just to show them what like real building site looks like, but also because it's nice, because it's the Olympics and that kind of thing. And I'm not finished quite yet. I'm sorry. And what they saw there is they saw, you know, like many people not from the local area, coming from, I don't know, wherever, Poland and Eastern Europe and other places. Now, I'm nothing against this. I don't want you to get me wrong, that it's wrong for somebody to move from one country to go to another country to get a job. But, you know, I mean, they talk so much about legacy, about what will happen after the games, yeah? And I'm thinking, well, the young people in this area are the, you know, biggest hope, the biggest investment for the future, yeah. And they're being cut out of it. So it's, in my opinion, big corporate circus maximus. This whole Olympics, and I'm not sure if there is something, you know, good coming for people after, other than to say we won 10 gold medals or 20 gold medals or however many gold medals. Yeah. You had another question?
Yes. How you see progress Occupy movement?
What's that?
Occupy movement.
Occupy movement. I don't know. Because I'm not actively involved in the organisation of Occupy. I know that they have another site they have moved to. I haven't been there, so I don't know. I mean, maybe if they get a bigger space, more public space, maybe if the right questions are asked publicly, people will get angry again. you know, so
Public
if the right questions are asked publicly.
То есть, если открыто, публично будут заданы правильные вопросы,
Может быть, люди начнут задавать себе эти вопросы и задумываться обо всем.
Maybe people will get again involved in this.
Позиция? Или вообще
Вообще все.
London, OccupyLondon, what kind of moves about anti-capitalism? What do they think about small business? It's a true Marxism or...
Он не вовлечен в активное движение.
What do they think about?
OccupyLondon moves about anti-capitalism.
Very anti-capitalist movement.
What about petty bourgeois, small business?
Yeah, this is problem for England because I think it was Marx or Engels who coined it correctly that England is a nation of shopkeepers. You know, so people.
Маркс или Энгельс назвал Англию страной лавочников, поэтому это проблема для тот вопрос, который ты поставил.
Yeah.
Because I started small business, so
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, you know, I mean, there are many shades to the Marxist movement, I feel, in the UK. There are some people who are more in favour of Lenin's, like, you know, NEP kind of thing.
What would you
New economic policy.
NEP.
Yeah, NEP. You know, and stuff like this. And I would say, you know, I'm not so hardcore as to say that, you know, that because I think my own personal opinion is that markets are essential component within the system. I don't want to get carried away too theoretical because you're gonna challenge me on this, and we can do this later. There are people who, you know, who do within the Occupy movement who don't. It's big capitalism which is the problem. The corporations and the banks, not the guy who owns local shop. You see what I mean? Yeah. Don't be afraid.
Alexei's point of view is to grow to the big capitalism and then nationalize this.
Так Роберт об этом и сказал, что у Роберта позиция такая, что... Не. Роберт сказал только что, да, что рынок должен быть в основе этой новой системы. И Роберт говорит, что вот Алексей со мной, конечно, не согласен, мы с ним еще в ближайшие дни будем спорить.
Мне их модель больше нравится.
We can sport it after.
Yeah, exactly.
What do you think about bicycles, protests, critical mass? Do you know?
Fantastic.
It was about 130 arrests, and next day it's about 200, more than 200.
Yeah, this is bullshit, man.
What?
Bullshit.
Yes, I know this word, but explain what people think about in England.
What point about?
You know, I mean, basically, you know, this wasn't a very published story. It happened because of the Olympics, and the government is incredibly scared of any political opposition during the Olympics because it's the time they're showing off London and London being open for business. So, in principle, this whole you know, critical mass arrest should not have happened, but it did. Yeah. I mean, I think it shows more about the government's fear than it does about, you know, any kind of cycling campaign group. Cycling campaign groups are very strong in England, and there's been a lot of changes to kind of road safety laws in London.
More concrete, because not much people know about this.
Critical mass in Russia.
Okay, critical mass is basically a cyclist movement.
For cyclist rights.
Yeah, it's for cyclist rights. So to make roads in cities safe for cyclists. Yeah. So every so often they get in big group together and they go and take over the streets, like, you know, 200 cyclists or something like this. They were cycling. They were doing critical mass in East London, where the Olympics are, the day before the Olympics, like they do. Every month they have one day which they particularly do it on. It's like the last Thursday or last Friday of every month.
We have the same here.
Yeah.
At night.
Yeah. So they started doing that, and then you know, the police came along and arrested 200 of them It's just more cases of kind of police brutality, I think. You know what I mean? I mean, the police, they're very, you know, heavy on these protesters.
Yes. But what ordinary Englishman thinks about
cyclists?
About this arrests?
Not many people know, I don't
Really?
think. Yeah, I don't think.
Why? We know here, and why you don't know?
Yeah, I know.
In England?
It's not a big political issue.
I
you
see.
know what I mean? Let's say that much. And I wasn't there when it happened, so I don't know what people are thinking about this. People are being distracted by the Olympics at the same time now, so you know, everywhere there it's Olympic this, Olympic that. You know, go Great Britain and all this kind of thing. Yeah.
Завтра по Первому каналу будет, да, появился иностранный представитель от Госдепа, который привез оранжевую революцию в Нью-Саксус.
By the way, Russian propaganda talks to people that foreign agents face opposition. So if cops see you here, they think you are the foreign agent which organizes all.
With cash from
this kind of discussion
Gosdep.
We discussed it.
Yeah, so, you know, maybe, well, it's probably not going to happen because I haven't been arrested, so my face will not be on, you know, like, Gazeta or something like this tomorrow.
С другой стороны, это можно воспринимать так, что это придание интернационального измерения секса. Можно и так посмотреть.
У нас испанцы были, кто там? Новозеландцы были, австралийцы уже были, англичане, немцы заходили. Как бы вот.
Вроде вопросов больше нет или еще?
Шведы еще были. Да? Я не был.
Кстати, если кому-то интересно изучение «Капитала» имени Карла Маркса, обращайтесь. Вот мы еженедельно собираемся, изучаем «Капитал».
Well, I hope it was, you know, something, you know, good for you that you were able to get out today, and you know that you were able to maybe find out something that you didn't know before, something like that. So, yeah. Yeah, just like the newspapers are doing with the Leveson inquiry for me.